Are we set up and ready to go? Let's check and see. We're ready. We're up. Running. Let me tweet this out. Because that's what we do. We tweet things out. That'll do. Excellent. Okay. We're back. Once again with another pre-watch party. Sorry, I'm a little late compared to last week, but time got away from me. And then I had to make a drink. So, yes. Hope we're all doing well. And we're all ready for episode number 7, the penultimate episode. There's only 2 left. And then we are going to be without some content for a few months, I think, until Skeleton Crew. But hopefully, we'll get some answers today. Hey, Metallic, how are things going? How are you doing? So, yeah. Expecting this to be an episode that is, if not all, then the majority of it will be flashbacks. We'll find out what happened on Brendok. And I am genuinely intrigued to see what they come up with. This'll kind of, I hope this will give us a little bit of a lead into what's going to happen in the last episode, because I honestly do not know what could happen. You know, there's a lot of things, there's a lot to get through in just 2 episodes, when you think about it. There's still a lot to do. So, the only thing I know for certain from the trailer is that there's going to be a space scene, like a chase. And I'm starting to think more and more now that maybe that space scene is not Soul chasing Osha and Chimera in the present, and it could be more of a flashback chase, because it could be the same ships. You know, the Jedi were in the same ship that Soul's in, and who knows, maybe Chimera had that ship as well, still going forward. So it's going to be an interesting one. But either way, we'll find out whether Soul is a villain. Hopefully we'll find out how Chimera is tied into the whole thing. And again, I still think that he was there. I think that he was on Brendok at the time. So we'll see what happens. But in the last week, there's been some big events, not just in the Star Wars world. I think the latest Star Wars controversy is the whole, I mean, at least from what I've seen, and from what I've been tagged in directly, is apparently people being offended that Chimera got naked. Even though, you know, we didn't see anything. It was just literally his bare chest. Which, you know, these people are never happy. They're never happy, no matter what you do. You know? You totally forgot the new episode was today. How can you forget? It's the same time every week, and it has been for the last 5 weeks. Come on. Come on. Let's get a bit of consistency. Although you'll have to get used to it. After next week, there won't be any more. Hello, Zuko. You okay, buddy? You want to jump up? You come say hello? No? He was moaning at me. He's got his toy and he's moaning at me now. I don't know what he wants. I never know what he wants. So, yeah, it's kind of one of those where it's like, I desperately want this show to finish strong. You know, last episode was good, with the exception, and again, this is kind of like the overall issue that I've had with the show is the pacing and the editing has been a little bit iffy. You know, some of the dialogue's a bit janky, but it doesn't bother me. The story itself is still quite intriguing. I just really want this show to end on a strong note, because that would, you know, again, it deserves it. I think that, you know, a story with this much mystery and build up. Here he is. You okay, buddy? What are you doing? Don't worry, that's just the chair. You come to say hello. He's come to say hello to everyone. So Everyone say hello to Zuko. He's being very... Yeah, he's digging in. He's digging in right now. He's brought his toy along with him. But yeah, this is the content you really wanted, isn't it? This is the cat content. You know, ignore me. I'm half covered up by the cat here. Zuko is just kind of wanting to say hello to everyone. You have a job that keeps you up for 15 hours a day. 15 hours? I mean, technically we're all up for 15 hours if you're getting more or less the average amount of sleep, but, you know, it's not normally through work. You know, either way, I think you could probably do with a better job. Then again, so could we all. So could we all. Are you okay, buddy? Eh? Did you have to pick this time to come and, you know, do this especially? What's wrong? Eh? So yeah, what do you think's going to happen? Do you think Sol did it? No? Ow, my hand. Alright, see you later. So yeah, it's one of those strange ones, isn't it? Where it's like this show, it's kind of been a bit of an anomaly, and you know, I've kind of really wanted it to do well, and I think if we're all honest, there's definitely been issues with it, but definitely not as bad as some say. You know, some people have really just ragged on it because they like to rag on Star Wars nowadays, which is ironic because people do just they don't want happiness in their life. You know, people will find any little thing to criticize, and it's like I say, if I just pick up on what I've been criticized for was apparently thirsting after Chimera, and I will not be shamed by my thirsting of Chimera. You think Sol isn't as innocent as he lets on? I don't think so either. I think that Sol, if he wasn't directly responsible for whatever went down, I think he definitely knows, and he was part of the cover-up. And he doesn't necessarily feel as much guilt as you would expect. Like, Torben felt so much guilt, he kind of, you know, just went into a coma for a decade and then killed himself. Everyone seems to have been affected in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you think about it, and each one of them, with the exception of Sol, was in isolation. Indara was away on an isolated planet. Torben went into his coma. Kalnaka went off into a forest somewhere. Sol was the only one that stayed around. You know, he was the only one that kind of stayed in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant with Venestra. Which makes me think that those two are in cahoots, doing something. But it'll be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see. But yeah, as I say, the topic of this week's controversy in Star Wars is... I mean, I've seen a few stupid takes, like the welding on the Cortosis helmet. You know, how do you think they make the helmets? You know... It's lightsaber resistant. But you know, firstly, welding the joints doesn't mean the whole damn thing is cortosis. You know, do you think the teeth are cortosis? Do you think the joints are cortosis? Because it's a 2-part helmet. It's not all cortosis, it's mostly cortosis. Cortosis is being said a lot, and it's going to lose all meaning in a second. So, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, it makes sense that you would need tools to work on cortosis, and cortosis is only going to affect a certain type of tool, and that is a lightsaber. So there was that kind of take. And again, it's a nitpick. It's a tiny little nitpick. It's like, oh, you know, now you're getting stuff from the EU that you've been so desperately wanting. Now you're finding ways to nitpick it in ways that you wouldn't if it was anyone else doing this. And then, as I say, because I was, you know, slightly thirsty for Chimera in the last reaction, some people seem to think that it was wrong, and that it was we shouldn't be having sexualized content in a children's show. Firstly, when has this ever been a children's show? The Acolyte, you know, you can say the movies. The movies is definitely aimed towards kids and teenagers, but all of the shows that have streamed have all been aimed at different audiences. Andor isn't aimed at kids. Neither is The Acolyte. You know, there are some shows that definitely are. It's kind of like, if any kids are watching this and their concern is more over the man with his chest exposed than it was with the beheadings last week and the corpse, the corpse of Jackie and Yord, I think their priorities are a little bit all over the place. Maybe. So yeah. They mistook disabling lightsabers for disabling all technology. Yeah, pretty much. It's like, how would you make a helmet? That precise. You would need tools. There would need to be something resistant to its effects. But again, this is kind of more just the unfortunate nitpicking. It doesn't matter what it is, they're always going to find something to nitpick. And it's a shame because it gets in the way of genuine kind of like critique of the show. If it makes people feel like they can't, have little criticisms, which are completely valid, because then it feels like empowering the people who are saying, this is terrible, this show is awful. It's like, people should be allowed to give their opinion without fear of judgment. But at the same time, if you're going to publicly give your opinion, expect it to be scrutinised. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's frustrating because I could very easily sit there and give show equal amounts of praise and criticism. Because, yeah, it's been decent, but it's not been perfect. There's been issues, but there's also been a lot of stuff I've enjoyed. But you feel like you have to focus on one or the other now. It's like you can't just be genuinely balanced because people will use that to and it's on either side. They'll use it to kind of fuel their own arguments. Every Star Wars movie since Revenge of the Sith has been PG-13. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it is exactly that. It's kind of like it's a movie for teenage audiences and above. Yes, kids can watch it. It's not a horror movie. It's not, it's not going to have any kind of gratuitous violence. But it's going to have adult themes. And that's the thing. Adult themes are, not uncommon in Star Wars. It's just sprinkled in such a way that, it's not as noticeable. And I use kind of the example as, Return of the Jedi. You've got Slave Leia, you've got the Twi'lek dancer, Episode 2, you've got Padme in her very seductive black dress, and Anakin being a little creepy. It's, it is, it's one of those. So, we've just got to get on with it, Look forward to the last 2 episodes here, and then we're on to Skeleton Crew, which I can't remember. Is Skeleton Crew going to be out November, December time? We've still not had a trailer for it, which again, I'm not expecting a trailer until The Acolyte is finished, because you don't want to diminish the expectations of this show and divert attention away. But at the same time, I'm hoping that they're not. I'm hoping that they keep the train rolling. I think it'd be good for them to release a trailer fairly quickly after this show ends to get the interest kind of pumped in there. Because, if it is the end of this year, it's not that far away. It's only 6 months. In fact, I'm going to have a look and see. Skeleton Crew release date. December. So, yeah, I mean, if it's going to be mid-December, then we're pretty much 6 months away. And, we started getting Acolyte material around about March time, I think. So about 3 months out. But that was quite late compared to some of the others. God, I hate seeing it. You just type in Skeleton Crew and under the videos section it comes up with all the fake trailers. I honestly can't stand the fake trailer channels. They pull in fucking millions of views with AI and all kinds of shit. It's just, yeah, it's one of those. Another grift. Another grift. So, yeah, what are we hoping to see in the episode today? You worked on that show over a year ago and it's still not out. Insane. Yeah, I think there was the strikes caused a lot of issues with that one, didn't it? I don't know if it was during production or if it was post-production, but I know that's... And, it's the knock-on effect as well, because it knocked back the Acolytes. It's going to have knocked back Skeleton Crew, because they would have all had a release date in their mind for this. In the same way that we were probably going to be getting Andor Season 2 this year, had there not been the strikes. We're not getting that till next year now, which is fine. Again, I think you can make the mistake of releasing too much too soon. And that's a danger. You really don't want to have too many projects. And this is what I said about the movies, is that there was too much too soon. They should have spread it out a bit longer. Rather than having the 3 movies out over the space of the 4 years, it should have been, the 3 movies in the space of 8-9 years. Give it 2 to 3 years per movie. And if you want, in the meantime, have a couple of, Star Wars stories in the middle, like Rogue One, like Solo. But, yeah, the same with the TV shows. Obviously they are going to be more common, because they are... You can work on multiple projects at a time. Even though it's like... They still now cost as much as a movie now, which is still crazy to me. Again, if that is true about the budget for the Acolyte, I would question where most of that money has gone, because this doesn't look like a hugely expensive production. I'm not saying it looks cheap, I'm not saying it looks bad, but it does not look like the 180 million, production that it's supposed to be. It was post-production, yeah, so then that's probably where it's got knocked back quite a bit, because again, you're probably looking at, especially if it being the kind of, how long was it? Like 4 months the writers' strike was on? Or it wasn't just writers, it was actors' strike. So, it meant that nothing could get done in that time period. So, but yeah, it's been an odd journey the last few weeks. One thing I won't miss are these late nights, I think, as much as I enjoy watching The Acolyte, I struggle with these late nights. And I am hoping that, Skeleton Crew... I know you Americans hated the old release schedule. Because, what was it? Like midnight Pacific time it would come out? It was still a better arrangement, I think, for most, because, if you lived on the East Coast, it kind of sucked, I guess. Was it like 3 o'clock in the morning? But, it's no different now than Europe gets. Europe gets it 2 to 3 in the morning. I'm just thinking from my own perspective, though. Midnight wouldn't be too bad. I'm sat there thinking to myself, make it midnight for Europe. That means it's 7 o'clock Eastern time and 4 o'clock Pacific. And that feels like a good compromise to me. Like those times. Because then it's not too late for the European audience, which will be a big bulk of the audience. And, it means that I could get to bed probably around about, 2:30, 3 o'clock rather than 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then it means that, it's kind of right in that dinner time range for, the folks in the US. Because, let's face it, 4 to 7, depending on where you live in the US, that's a pretty alright time. I know most people prefer 9 o'clock because that's prime time, but, it's streaming. There's no such thing as prime time on streaming. As long as it's in that evening slot where most people are going to be out of work, even if they have to wait an hour or so after they come back from work, I don't necessarily see the problem. But again, I'm thinking from the perspective of the European, because we're suffering now with these late night releases. So yeah, I won't miss that. I won't miss the late nights once the show ends. But I'll miss the mystery of the show. But again, I'm just hoping that we get a well-structured, well-paced show. Because again, based on the reports of how long these last 2 episodes are going to be, they're only going to be about 40 minutes all in. So again, about 35 minutes if you take away recaps and trailers. So again, we're not getting massively long episodes to solve a lot of issues. You know, you think about everything that we got to resolve. So we've got to find out what happened on Brendok, which I expect to take the better part of an episode, because there's a lot to dig out there. Then you have the reactions to that with Soul and May, Osha and Chimera. And then there has to be some kind of a showdown, which means that they have to catch up to each other. Whatever shit goes down has to go down. And then you've got the question of Venestra as well, and if there's going to be anyone else get involved, i.e., is there another Sith out there? You know, Tenebris. I don't think Plagueis will be involved at this point. I think it's probably still a little too early for Plagueis. Or it could be someone completely new. They may decide to divert from the old canon on that. Because again, Plagueis, we know for a fact, has his place as Sidious's master. But there's nothing solid, I think, in current canon that says that Tenebris has to be Plagueis' master. I know that there was a division of the Sith Eternal named after Tenebris, but that could be easily, ignored. So it'll be interesting. But I'll say this for Leslie Headland. You can say a lot about her. You can like her, not like her, whatever. I think that she has implemented a lot of old school Star Wars, kind of knowledge. Simple little things like cortosis. You don't do that unless you've been doing your research into Legends. And it might not be her, but it's still her decision to implement it. So I certainly think that this show is not lacking for respect for the Star Wars material, Some people will disagree, but I'd say that the show overall has kind of done an alright job of respecting the history of Star Wars, or at least in universe. It's trying to expand on it at some points, isn't it? What do I think was Soul's level of involvement in what happened to the Coven? I don't think that he started whatever happened, but I think that he had a big hand in helping to cover up. And I was saying this earlier, you think about all of the Jedi who were there and where they ended up. So you've got Torben, who is clearly so guilty he's locked himself away in essentially a coma for 10 years, and then he killed himself. So he has a lot of guilt. Indara and Kalnaka kept themselves far away from Coruscant. They were on their own little planets, trying to be independent and trying to be, out there away from, the hustle and bustle of the Jedi Council. It's only Soul that was still on Coruscant in the temple with Venestra. And it appears to be only those 5 who know exactly what's gone on. And so I know that a lot of people are saying that Chimera is Venestra's apprentice. And I think that, there's definitely some stock in that. People are saying that he got his scar, on his back from her lightsaber whip. But to me, it doesn't look especially like it would be a scar from a lightsaber whip, because it looks more like it looks a bit more like a lightning bolt than anything else. Because you think about how a whip would, scar, it verges off into a branch on his back, whereas a whip wouldn't do that. It would crisscross, if that was the case. But we'll find out. But yeah, there's definitely, Chimera was definitely in that group, I think. I think the flashback we've been given so far was very selective and left out things intentionally. So we'll see what happens. it could be Tor Vellum from the original episode 9 script. Oh, the creature on the baby's head. I don't think so. I think that got scrapped. And that's probably for the best. Like, I'm all for weird and wacky in Star Wars and something new, but that did feel a bit out of place looking back at that movie. I mean, not that there was anything that felt particularly in place in that movie. It was all over the show. It was a shit show. But I think that would have been like too out of the blue. It's like, what? There's suddenly this weird monster that, taught, Plagueis and Palpatine or whoever. It would have been too much. And I think that'd be the case here. Whoever it is, if there is going to be another a Sith Master, it needs to be someone relatively recognizable. Because if they're saying that this show ends like as a collective story, all neat and tidy, you can't be leaving your audience with questions as to, well, who was that? So it could well be Plagueis. That would be the easiest option for them to do. What are my thoughts on this planet matching the description of Baldemic from Legends, which is where Plagueis killed Tenebris? Yeah, I mean, that would make sense, because obviously that is where there was a lot of the ore for Cortosis. It was a planet that wasn't known to the Jedi at that point. And they're being very specific about not naming it. And the only thing they've confirmed is that it's not Acto. It just happens to share, again, the kind of land type. It's a very similar looking planet. So I think it probably is. Whether they still call it Baldemic is another question. And whether we are going to see any of the history of Legends match up is going to be another question. I'm not sure if we will or not. I don't mind either way. I don't mind if they diverge from canon. I also don't mind if they lean into Legends as well. As long as it's clear to the audience, and as long as it's done in a clever way, I won't have a problem with whatever they decide to do. I just want them to execute it well. Which, again, I think is just where the show has struggled. It's less about its concepts and more about its execution, which is where it's struggled. But we'll see. Again, I'm also kind of sat here thinking, how much do I want this to be a full flashback episode, and how much do I kind of want it to be a mix? And I think it's going to depend very much on how much story there is to tell on that flashback. If it is him, do you think they'll chicken out and make him human instead of Moon? In terms of Plagueis, do you mean? I think they'd have Plagueis be a Moon. Whether if it was Tenebris was going to be a Bith. I think they might, because he always looked a bit silly to me. The sketchings of Tenebris, he always looked a bit silly. Because when you think about the Bith, they were kind of. I'm trying to find the image. When you think about it, they were just a side character that was introduced in episode 4, and it was probably from a props department in London that just had a few bits and pieces of alien prosthetics, so they were just designed to look a little bit weird and wacky. And Tenebris, he's never quite looked intimidating to me. He's never quite looked like a Sith Lord. And I think if you wanted to have a non-human Sith outside of Plagueis, there are plenty of other races that you could use to try and have a more intimidating, presence. But either way, people are going to be offended if they do it. If they pull the trigger and they have, a Bith Sith Lord, it's not going to be good enough. And if they chicken out and make it something else, it won't be good enough. So they might just decide to go with that third option and just say, fuck it, we're going to have someone completely different and someone new. Which is also okay, but people will still hate it. There's no winning philosophy, I don't think, for them. Completely agree. Concepts for the show are great. It's just lacked in the execution. Yeah, just a picture of Sith Cantina Band. Yeah, I don't know how it would work with the mask. You wouldn't be able to get that musical instrument in there. You know, you'd have to find another orifice to shove it up. Plagueis has always looked very intimidating, in my opinion. Yeah, Plagueis is different. Plagueis with the thin, long head. You know, Moon's... The only time that we've seen that Moon in the prequels, that he looked a little silly because it was really bad CGI, you know? I think they could make a very threatening-looking Moon in current live action, if they chose to. But it's the Bith that I'm more thinking about, you know? It's kind of the same with a Celestin. I'm not sure a Celestin would be particularly intimidating, because I don't know if it's just because they look too silly. They look a little bit too fish-like. It's just weird. It's like could you imagine, you know, a Mon Cala Sith Lord? In fact, think of any alien race in Star Wars and think about their Sith alternative, and are there that many that I can think of that would be, you know, intimidating? I think that's why Maul worked so well, because the Zabrak was designed to look intimidating, because the Zabrak the very first Zabrak character that we saw was intended to be a Sith, with the face paint and the horns. It wasn't the other way around. It wasn't that they made this race and then decided later on to make them a Sith. You know, so it'll be interesting. It will be interesting. In fact, I'm going to go look through some of the races of Star Wars. I'm going to have a look and see what would, you know, look intimidating. I mean, obviously, there's the typical kind of Jar Jar. You know, Jar Jar would, you know, Darth Lord of the Sith. I don't think Jar Jar would make a very good Sith Lord. You know, neither would any of his people. Deveronians. I think Deveronians would make a good Sith, because, you know, they've already got that devil look to them. I don't think Togrutas would really look that great. But again, maybe it's just because I'm so used to Ahsoka being the good character that she is. I think Iktochi, you know, they could well, because again, they've got that kind of horned motif going on. Utapauans, I think they'd make a decent Sith Lord. Umbarans, the creepy ass eyes. Pantorans, maybe. But looking at more of the alien types, you know, I think a Duros Sith would be quite interesting. I'm just looking, because there are some. I never realised how many weird looking fucking aliens there are in Star Wars. I mean, I did realise, I just didn't realise how many of them actually there were there. Cinetine with the big brains, not sure about that. We've already seen a Zygerian in the show. Maybe that's what they're leaning into. Maybe a Zygerian. They've got history with slaving and stuff like that, you know. The Biff are the jazz players in the canteen. Yes, that is correct. Maul was literally designed to look like the devil, yeah. Hey, Earl, how you doing? Just bring back the original Sith species from KOTOR. Yeah, you could. Again, that's going to be one of those points of contention where it's like, if you start bringing in things from KOTOR, then they're going to be thinking about, you know, all of the stories there, you know, like Darth Treya and stuff like that. It's like, you're walking you've got to walk a very fine line between honouring the past and making your own story. If you tread too finely into one side or the other, you're gonna have issues. You know, if you tread too finely into honouring the past and copying the stories, it's not going to feel quite original. As much as people will enjoy it in the short term, it's like Starkiller. If Starkiller suddenly showed up, like, say for example, if he was an Inquisitor, because that's what a lot of people thought. A lot of people thought that Marek for example, might have been Starkiller. You know, as ridiculous as that idea was, and sort of going back to all the speculation around Ahsoka at that point. Do you remember Ahsoka? And do you remember the speculation about Marok, and he just turned out to be green gas? You know, I think if you look at it from that perspective, it would have been great for the immediate reaction, like, oh my god, that's Starkiller. But then you would very quickly realise, actually, it might look like Sam Witwer, it might sound like Sam Witwer, they might give him the same character name, but it's not Starkiller from the games, and it never will be. And, you know, that's gonna damage your story credibility, and it's gonna take emphasis away from the show. You know, and disappoint people ultimately. But on the other side, if you kind of like try and do your own thing and completely overwrite what came before, people are going to be annoyed because, well, you've just ignored everything that came before, and this was really good story. So it's a very hard job. I don't envy anyone having to make stories that overlap with any kind of Legends material, even if it's just vague material. Which is why I think, you know, they did make the right choice in scrapping the EU for anything post Return of the Jedi. And they've implemented little bits of it, like bringing Thrawn back in. You know, that's kind of like the clever stuff, and getting Timothy Zahn to do it is a smart move, even if it's been a little inconsistent, you know, and I didn't fully like Thrawn in Ahsoka, but it was less to do with the performance and more about the show overall, the way the show is presented, I guess. Are we all excited for the Wookiee saber fight? I'm excited to see how that goes down, because it's clear. I still think there's some mindfuckery going on there, because like we know that they controlled Torben, and Torben is clearly shit scared, because like he gets jumped, he gets injured, and then he jumps. It looks like he jumps on a speeder, and they have this speeder chase. And you know, it's a case of, does Cal Naka go wild because he gets taken over by one of the witches? Or does something happen? You know, maybe this is after what's happened and Torben's going to squeal, and so they are like, well, we need to shut you up. Who knows? This thing, it's not often you get a genuinely intriguing story that you don't know exactly where it's going to go. You know, I say this, I used to say this all the time when I was watching shows on my other channel, when I used to do reactions, like, regularly. I find that I've watched that much TV, and there's that much repeated tropes and stories now that we've been exposed to so much, that it's very rare that there's not something, you know, I can't at least get a hint of a story's path. You know, it's like some stuff is very predictable, like you can tell who's gonna turn traitor or who's gonna die, who's gonna live, where the story's going. But in this show, it's kind of like, you know what, I genuinely don't know exactly what might have happened on Brendok. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen in that last episode. I don't know who's going to live. I don't know who's going to die. I don't know who I want to live. I don't know how I want to die. I want Soul to survive. But is that going to change after today's episode? And I think, is it more just because I really like the performance from the actor? You know? Will I feel any more sympathy towards May and Osha? I don't know. I'm still not... I haven't connected to them, either of them yet. I appreciate what they're trying to do with them, doing the old switcheroo. You know, they've both been lied to, they've both been manipulated, so now they're seeing things from the other side. We might get an old, you know, double cross, where it's kind of like Osha turns bad, May turns good. But then, you know, maybe they'll both just end up dying in the last episode. I honestly... wouldn't bother me as much. I feel more sympathy and sadness for Jackie and Yord, and I don't think that's the thing, is I don't think I'm alone, and I think that's kind of the perennial issue of the show, is that they didn't take enough time to build up the twins. It's like you've just kind of rushed into it. We should have had at least half a season just focusing purely on the twins, you know, a good 5-6 episodes, and then moving into a new arc. That's what made Andor really good. And again, I know a lot of people are probably sick of us using Andor as the barometer for Star Wars at the moment. But, you know, it is a really good example of story structure, where you have mini arcs throughout a show. if you give a show 12 episodes, it can have 3 or 4 sets of mini arcs where you slowly bring in characters, you allow them to be focused on, and then you bring them all together at the end. And you have a very rewarding and, a story that kind of has a clear path. Whereas with the Acolyte, what I found is that they introduced everyone in the first episode, more or less, and we've been with everyone all over the place. Like, there's been no focus on one particular person. I'd say with the exception of the Young twins in the flashback episode, but again, Young twins flashback didn't quite work, for me at least. So I do feel like the way they've decided to tell the story and they've paced it has damaged it a little bit. It could have been given a few more episodes to flesh the characters out. So Marek was so disappointing. Yeah, absolutely. Just green gas. Didn't even get like an explanation as to why he's green gas. He just shows up and tells the Empire. Was he green gas there? Or was he a person? One thing the series has gotten right is the mystery of it all. It's quite unpredictable, which keeps me watching it and guessing. Yes, I agree, El. Canada is holding its own against Argentina right now in the Copa America semi-finals. Are Canada in the semi-finals? Sorry, we're in a little bit of a distraction here. I suppose, yeah, it's only 17 minutes in, but hey, go Canada. I always like to root for the underdog. Canada are definitely going to be an underdog there. So yeah, go Canada. Who's in the other semi-final? Let's have a look. Uruguay and Colombia. Okay, I'm rooting for Canada. 100%. I thought it was interesting how Soul's persona seems to get darker when he's tied May down, especially "and you're going to listen." Yes. That was and the music changed. The music became a bit more sinister, when he was trying to talk to her. And it's kind of like, has Soul been playing us all along? Has he fallen into this persona of the gentle, kind Jedi Master? And as he's being forced to relive the events of Brendok, is that old side of him starting to come out more and more? Because 100% there's something serious going down, because Venestra is desperate to find Soul and make sure that, whatever happened doesn't get out to the Jedi Council. Because I think, she definitely knows. Venestra is 100% in the know. She's going to have been part of the cover-up. And it's something so serious that she doesn't want to get into the council, whether it's because it would damage her position or just damage the council in general, like the entire order. Who knows? Maybe there's a secret, maybe she's a secret Sith. Maybe that purple light whip turns red. It's not far off, purple and red. But I doubt it. I don't think she's going to end up being a Sith or a bad person. I think, like with a lot of mentor figures and a lot of people in power, they make mistakes. And rather than owning up and being responsible, covering it up is far easier. It's the easy path, Can't wait to see what this dark side of Soul is all about. I think we'll find out tonight. I hope so. If they I swear to God, if they ended on a cliffhanger, I might just strangle myself live on air. I might just, I was going to say something really dark then and say, like, do a David Carradine, but then I realised that, there would be no sexual gratification there. It would just be the choking. That's it. And so it's, I just, that's the thing, is that I don't mind cliffhangers as long as there's like a good payoff, which the very often isn't. You can do cliffhangers really well and multiple times in a show, but it's got to be something that's worthwhile, rather than just being like this is a good dropping off point, we'll leave the audience on tenterhooks here. Sometimes it can feel like we just need a way to end the episode and potentially bring them back next week, so we'll just make this into a cliffhanger. Like last week, putting the helmet on didn't need to be a cliffhanger. We knew that we were probably going to be getting the flashback this episode, and we know what putting the helmet on is symbolizing. If anything, Like, her putting it on, holding it there for a few seconds, and then taking it off, and us seeing the reaction of her having experienced the flashback would be far better. Like, if we could see her guttural reaction to having already experienced the flashback. Because I think that's what's going to happen. She's going to put the helmet on. She's going to experience the flashback through the Force. So rather than ending it with us just on her breathing through the helmet, have her take it off and just pan in very slowly on her shocked face. And maybe there's a dawning horror. And that really gets you, because then you're like, oh my god, this is so bad that she is actually, physically disgusted. It reminds me of Bix in Andor, and again, I hate going back to Andor to compare it because it's apples and oranges and whatnot, but still, anything that I can use as a comparison for a really good bit of storytelling. It's like with Bix, when she gets the headset put on her and she's listening to the deaf screams of children. You can't hear it because theatre of the mind, far more effective. And it just focuses on a close-up of her face and the slow realisation of what's happening. And then it cuts away instantly. Obviously that wasn't necessarily a cliffhanger, but it left us off on her experience, and it really had an impact, emotionally. So, that's what I mean by, like, the show could be doing bits better than it has been. The execution could have been better. So, I feel like May's story out makes no sense to me. Revenge, then going to surrender to Kalnaka because Osha's alive, then fleeing to Chimera. Now she's just trying to kill Solo and Fun Jedi. Yeah, that's what I mean, is that we've just not had enough time with May to fully understand. Osha, fair enough. Fairly simple motivation for Osha. She was in the Order. She left for whatever reason. She failed. She's been working as a mechanic. Gets picked up into all this drama, and she just wants, once she finds out her sister's alive, she just wants to save her. Fairly simple. Whatever happens from here, whatever she gets caught up in, we can understand her motivation. May, it's different. It started out simple enough. Okay, she's pissed. She's killing Jedi that she's got a vendetta against, who are clearly involved in this tragedy. And, she's got a bit of a human side to her. Gets to kind of like episode 2 or 3, and it's like, okay, she's still angry. She's still trying to kill people, but she's having doubts. And in episode 4, it's like where everything flips. Episode 4 and 5. And it's kind of like, she suddenly is like, no, I'm going to go turn myself in. On the flip of a dime. And then she gets there and Kalnaka's dead. And, yes, you can understand that she might realise in horror that her master has realised that she's betrayed him. So then she flees. But for me, it's kind of like when Jackie attacks her and she tries to flee again. It's like, why not just go with the Jedi? Like, Jackie could have taken you in, taken you back to the ship, like Yord, and we could have avoided a lot of this mess. But no, you were intent on killing Jackie and then the Jedi, and it's like, yeah, now you want to kill Soul again? It's like, until we know the flashback, it's not going to make too much sense. Hopefully the flashback will clear up her story a bit, but that's what I mean, is by having it staggered this way and paced this way, her story's been a bit more unrelatable and harder to connect with. So this will be one of those where I say, I think this show would be far better if you could sit down and watch all 8 episodes back to back than if you were to watch them, week to week. And I'm not very often a proponent of just dumping a show all in one go. I don't like the Netflix model of it. I do like the build-up of each week, being able to watch a new episode. You talk about it through the week. You dissect it, but usually you get enough content in there to, feel fulfilled. And the story is paced appropriately, but it hasn't been here. It really hasn't. Manny Jacinto and Lee Jung-jae are definitely highlights of the show. Yes, 100%. Like I say, I'm still massively impressed that Lee Jung-jae learns English in 4 months for this role. Because I remember in Squid Game, that was his breakout role. And I remember, reading that he couldn't speak English, so that was going to potentially limit him for roles in Hollywood. Because, you need to speak English if you're going to be a big star in Hollywood. There's no qualms about it. So when he came into this show, and he was speaking, relatively clear English, despite a heavy accent. And then I read that he'd learned English in 4 months. I was like, man, that's impressive. I did Duolingo Spanish for 4 months, and I barely learned the basics. And then I forgot it all when I stopped. So, that's dedication. And, Manny Jacinto, this is the first I've seen him in. I've not seen, I think it's The Good Place that he was in before. I've not seen that. But he's impressed me on more than one level. I will not be shamed for my thirst. I know people online tried to say that it was wrong to thirst after a man, and we shouldn't be trying to encourage nudity in Star Wars. But you know what? We like what we like. It's not like having a topless man is the most controversial thing that should ever have existed in Star Wars. And if we had gotten a little bit more nudity, it's not there's never going to be full frontal. That's the thing. And I'm not comfortable with a lot of the sex scenes in modern TV. I feel a lot of it is gratuitous and unnecessary. But you can do it tastefully. And, obviously, I thought it was tasteful the way they did it last week with Chimera. Do you mind? Hey? So it goes up on this tree again. So, yeah. Chimera literally seducing Osha to the dark side. I think the helmet on and breathing was a callback to Revenge of the Sith. You can tell Headland was inspired by a lot of different aspects of Star Wars. Yeah, and that's fine. I get the parallel. I get the kind of metaphorical parallel of putting the helmet on, the mechanical breathing. That is a step into the dark side, but it's kind of like you can do that whilst also having a better cliffhanger, if you get my meaning. So, great ideas, it's just execution is a bit lacking. Hello, Dion, how you doing? Sorry, I'm a little bit behind on chat. We started off really slow, and now the chats are starting to come in, so I'm kind of in this slow mode of chatting away. So apologies if I'm a little late on picking up on people's chats here, but how are you doing, Dion? That actress did a great job selling the torture from her facial expressions. Yes, the actors who played Bix, you could really see it in her face. It's like, and theatre of the mind is great from the perspective of the audience. It must be so difficult for the actor because you have to try and imagine what could be so horrendous because you have to express that. We buy it from the actor's performance, but the actor has to just go off their own imagination with, help from... And that's where a really good director comes in, because a really good director will give you the guidance. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realise. There's a big key aspect in direction that probably goes unnoticed to the casual audience member, but a really good director can make or break those scenes, for an actor. So kind of sad that I'm less interested in the twins. I'm more interested in Soul and Chimera. That's the problem though, is there's too many characters, like too soon. You try, and especially when there's so much mystery involved. Like if you want to have a lot of characters tied in with a mysterious story, you need to make sure that the mystery doesn't apply to all of them. Like, you need to have some characters that definitively their history, their motivation, and the path that they're on. But because this involves everyone, we don't now know what exactly is going on. We don't know motivations. We don't know histories. We don't know who's on whose side. And so it's great from the perspective of there's lots to think about, but at the same time, you're now kind of trying to figure out everyone's motivations, and it gets a bit sloppy. And so you tend then to latch onto the people who you've already connected with, and that for most people is going to be Soul and Chimera. It would have been Jackie and Yord if they'd have survived. So, I guess May wants to kill Jackie because she realised no Jedi could protect her from her master, so she wants to kill her and escape. That's a fair assumption. There's a fair assumption. It's just kind of like, it was just very sudden. There's ways of using dialogue to express that, and yeah, like I say, it's just all in the execution, isn't it? Manny's role in The Good Place is very different than this. He plays a comedic doofus from Florida. He has a lot of range that he can pull this off. That's interesting because, I can definitely see that in the Chimera character, like the goofy side of it. Like the sidekick to May, who was asking all these questions when they were walking through the jungle, or when he was trying to, help her with the poison in the shop. That side of it, I can definitely see. He plays a very good goofball character, but I've really loved since his reveal the kind of serious side of it. The kind of the brooding, philosophical side, because he's very unique. This Chimera character, it kind of just feels like he's a bit tired of the game. He's kind of like he's all open there. He's like, in more ways than one, obviously in the bathing scene, but he's all open. Like, he's like, what, and he might be manipulating Osha. Who knows? But as an audience member, I want to believe him. I want to believe that he's kind of so fed up of the Jedi and the status quo. And, even though his morals are all over the place, I can still buy into his motivation. And that's the key thing, is that you don't have to... You can relate to evil characters if you understand their motivation. Like, not just evil for the sake of being evil. Yes, they do evil things, but why is it that they're specifically targeting these types of people? Would Chimera kill innocent civilians? Probably, but only if it served his purpose. But he's definitely not above killing Jedi just for the sake of it, because that's his power. So, doing well, just editing yesterday's photo shoot, waiting on this week's episode. Nice. Was it a wedding that you were doing, or was it something a bit more different? Just learned yesterday that Charlie Barnett, the actor who plays Jord, is gay, and I think that's awesome. He's family. Okay, so there is a chance, you're saying. It's not completely off of the scale of probabilities that one day one of us might perhaps come across Charlie Barnett and fall hopelessly in love. I'm not saying exactly who it might be, but I will fight you all. But that's great, and again, it's nice to see that kind of, and again, people will say, oh, of course he is, of course it's a diverse casting. His character had nothing to do with his sexuality. His character was played like the most straight kind of guy. In fact, you'd probably say that he maybe came across as more asexual than anything. Because, he just didn't seem to be interested in, romance. He's a clean-cut Jedi, by the books, by the rules, kind of like, I'm Jord. I play by the rules. And again, the ironic thing is that by the end of it, if he had played by the rules, he'd probably still be alive. If he'd followed orders, he'd probably still be alive. And that's the little arc that he had. The little arc that he got. But that is good. I will keep that mentally locked away for if I ever encounter Charlie Barnett. That it's possible. Good to know. Do you think Chimera or another dark side user had a hand in the Bren debacle? Did they help the witches make the twins? Did they kill the witches to cover up and mess with the Jedi? I think Chimera was there. I think the flashback that we've seen in episode 3 was a little deceptive. And that he was there. In the background somewhere. Maybe he wasn't involved in any of those talks. Maybe he was still back on the ship. But, he definitely... Whether that was the moment where the Jedi turned on him, I'm not sure. I think that would make sense if he got left behind in the fire. How much of an influence he had on that, I don't know. Maybe that's where, the Sith Master picked him up. Maybe he got, thrown out by the Jedi. Maybe he did something. I don't know. It's just, that's why it's such a strange one, because you'd think, well, Soul should recognise him surely if he was there. But there's been so many strong hints that he was there. He's got the burns. He knew about Bunter, and he had a supply of Bunter, and the only place to get Bunter apparently is Brendok. He obviously has history with Osha and May. He was a Jedi. His master betrayed him. There's all these little tidbits that they've been trying to tease us with, but when you're trying to put it into a solid story reason, It's hard. That's why I think this is a make or break episode, because if they manage to get the twist right, if they manage to do the twist in a way that is something that is completely unexpected and is executed really well, that will make the story. But also, there is the possibility that we're not able to put the story together in our heads because there's no logic to it. And that's the concerning part, is maybe this won't make sense because we've not been able to put 2 and 2 together because it equals 7. You know? Someone broke the calculator. You know? I just don't know. I really don't know. But that's why I'm looking forward to it. And part of the reason why I've enjoyed the show, because I don't know. I'm just hoping they execute it really well. Wedding was a couple of weeks ago. Yesterday was cap and gown graduation shoot. A young lady was happy with the school shots. Oh, nice. I went to my brother's graduation a couple of months back from university. And again, it was a very kind of formal cap and gown dealing. But I'm trying to remember how much they charged him for his photos. It was much more of a commercial thing. It was where they were all in one building. The university themselves employed the photographers, and then students had the option of buying the photos afterwards. I think it was like £50 for a couple of photos. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. Not 100% certain. I wasn't happy with the school shots. That's fair, yeah. You think Kaime was there as a Jedi? I do. That's my leading suspicion, is that he was there as a Padawan. People are saying that he was Venestra's Padawan, and that he got the scar on his back from a light whip. But again, the scar does not look like a light whip scar. I said this earlier. You think about the way, if you see someone who's had lashes on their back, they kind of crisscross and overlap, whereas the scar that he's got on his back is much more of a lightning effect. If you've seen anyone with scars from being struck by lightning, they kind of branch out like veins, and that's what the scars on his back look like. And, we all know that they like to skirt around meaning in dialogue, And something I've noticed with Kaime is that he always answers questions with questions. When Soul asked him, what master hides their face from a pupil, Kaime's answer was, "You tell me." And then when Osha asked him, "Did your Jedi Master betray you?" or something along those lines, he goes, What do you think?" He's always asking questions in response to questions. And that's kind of like, I'm trying to think, is he trying to throw us off in any way? So that, that scar on his back wasn't necessarily from his Jedi Master, but he attributes it to the Jedi Master because maybe he picked it up after he left the Jedi Order, so he wouldn't have got it if it hadn't been for the Master giving up on them. Is it just a roundabout way of attributing blame? Who knows? Brennock was 16 years back. Wouldn't Soul remember him if Kaime were a Jedi? It depends on how old Kaime actually is, and if Soul's memories have been altered in any way. We just don't know. Like, Kaime could have just been a one-time Padawan. If he was Venestra's Padawan, maybe got sent along as like a learning experience. Soul, whilst I'm sure he has vivid memories, could well be that, he just didn't remember him well enough if he only knew him for that one mission. Likewise, he could have been there, not as a Jedi, but I don't know. I think he was there. This is what I mean, is I just can't put it together in my head. I can't think of exactly what it was that happened. So I'm either going to be, there's no in between, there's no middle ground here. The reveal to this story is either going to be extremely satisfying or extremely disappointing, because it's gotten to that point now where I've built myself up, because I can't imagine what it is, that I'm like, all right, this is either going to be great or it's going to be awful. It's like, I don't know. Also curious about the line from Chimera that he was a Jedi a really long time ago. Could he be using a Sith Master to appear younger than he actually is? It's possible. It's possible that he's using some kind of a glamour, or maybe he's managed to stop himself aging. Maybe he's just a subspecies of human that doesn't age the same. Maybe just in his head it was a long time ago. Maybe he's been in carbonite for 100 years. Some people just say that, because from their perspective, it was a long time ago. Like 16 years ago, to some people might not be as long as others. Like, I imagine if you're, in your 70s, 16 years ago probably doesn't feel like that long ago. But if you're only 25, 16 years ago was when you were 9 years old. That probably feels like a long time. So, it's all about perspective. What do you all think about the theory that the swimming pool prolongs Chimera's life and that he could be decades older than he appears? I've not heard of that theory. It would be an odd one. Kind of a fountain of youth. It's never really been explored as an option. I don't even know if in the EU there was anything like that. And if that's the case, how would it work? Why haven't more people tried to, find it? Why is it just Chimera? I know the Jedi probably wouldn't be that interested. That would be like one of the temptations. That would be one of the typical Jedi kind of like, life must pass naturally. We all must live and die. We all must return to the living Force, and to extend our life unnaturally would be, an affront to the Force. It would be one of those kind of things. It's about the natural order of things versus human self-preservation. So the Jedi would probably want to destroy it. But that feels like something that's very dark side, and that pool didn't give me off dark side vibes. Like everything about avoiding death and prolonging life feels like it's dark side orientated, and that pool seemed too serene, too calming for it to be a dark side thing. But who knows? It's an interesting one. Am I planning on playing and streaming Star Wars Outlaws when it's released? Yes, that is my hope, that in the short term, whilst we wait for Skeleton Crew, I'll be able to play some Outlaws, and we'll hopefully get a couple of 100 hours of content out of that if it's as big and expansive as we're led to believe. And because it's open world, I was thinking about doing it as a video series, but because it's so open world, and obviously, you don't follow a linear path, it's harder to do a video series, so I probably will stream it on this channel. So, yeah, I'll probably pick that up at the end of August, right around payday. It's great. I love it when it falls like that. So I'll pick that up, install it. It'll be interesting, because I've not streamed a game on this setup. At least I don't think I have. Certainly not a game as probably is going to be as big as Outlaws. But, hopefully it'll be fun. It could be some version of Bacta. Bacta's already got a backstory, I think. Bacta story. I'm trying to remember, because it was in one of the books. It was in Phase 1 of the High Republic novels. I think it was like a new thing that was being farmed from one of the moons that like is in the system that gets decimated in like the second book, the first or second book. So it could be a version of it. I don't know if it would be because Bacta is like still a new thing, and it would be odd for there to be this like miracle Bacta that stops you aging that never gets seen again. Like I say, unless they just decide to destroy the planet, which would be in keeping for Star Wars. They're not above wrecking planets. We know that much. But yeah, we'll find out. I mean, we're only 15 minutes away from finding out. That's basically half the episode length as well. So that's depressing. I want longer episodes. I want more. Give me more. But again, I'm more curious about episode 8 as well, because at the moment we know nothing really of episode 8. And where the potential end of the story is going to lie. Because I'm pretty certain I saw that Leslie Headland said that season 1 will conclude the story that's been brought up. That's not to say there won't be a season 2, but she said that there won't be any threads left dangling. And so to get all of this done in 2 episodes is going to be a big task. So that makes me feel like probably everyone's going to die. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if everybody died and we ended the season on the reveal of, like, whoever Chimea's master is. Whether it's Tenebris, Plagueis, someone else, who knows? You know. We'll have to see. I'm going to make myself a drink shortly and sit down and cross my fingers that this show sticks the landing. I really want to like this show. Beyond the fight choreography, everything is up in the air. Yeah, I'd say obviously the fight choreography has really carried the show. The acting, for the most part, has carried the show. Again, I hate picking on people, but the actor who plays May and Osha just hasn't really landed it for me. And again, I don't know whether that's down to natural ability or direction or just general writing. I think some of the writing has been a bit sloppy, but I like the mystique of the story. But I think that's kind of been stunted by the pacing and the structure. So it's one of those shows where it's kind of all over the place. It's got its good points, it's got its not so good points. It's kind of like solidly above average at the moment, slightly above average. But again, the last 2 episodes are going to determine whether that becomes good, solidly good, or solidly average. One of those that you'd say, well, you're not missing out by not watching it, but it's not terrible, you know. Yeah, I'm going to make some tea as well, so I'll be signing off in like 5 minutes to get ready. So, did you hear the leaked title of episode 8? Do you want to know it? I know what it is. And it's vague. It's vague. It's kind of pathetic. You know, it doesn't really give us anything. I mean, it's not necessarily something I wouldn't have been surprised by. Because, you know, this show has kind of taken a dark turn the last few episodes. So having a dark, prophetic title for the final episode that doesn't really clue us in one way or the other, just that, you know, things are about to get fucked up. It's not a huge surprise. But yeah, I won't spoil it for anyone. It's short, simple, prophetic, you know. I don't think it gives anything away per se. If you expect the finale to be kind of like high octane, high stakes, then, you know, it shouldn't give too much away, but I will keep stum about that. So I best get Disney Plus loaded up and get ready, because I need to get my screen grabbing stuff sorted, which means I need to disable my hardware acceleration, because that's just the way things work, because reactions and all that. So yes. So final call before we dive off the deep edge and go dark. What do we think is going to happen? What are we expecting? What are we hoping for? Shoot. Give me your hopes and dreams, your expectations, and then next week we can pick up on what you know could be. And obviously I'll probably do a couple of videos in the week as well to kind of disseminate any theories I might have. It was only because of the election this week that I didn't get to do as many videos as I wanted. What are you eating? Hey, what are you eating? You find a snack somewhere? He's a good boy. You gonna jump up and say goodbye? Come on. Jump up. Jump up. Come on. Come on. Don't look at me. Just jump up. There you go. Good boy. Just noticed Darth Maul wasn't the only Zabrak in the Phantom Menace. There was a Jedi one too. Yeah, like I say, probably designed specifically for Maul, but they probably had, you know, a couple of designs for Jedi as well. They probably intended Zabrak to be more common than they end up being, and I definitely don't think they would have. They weren't planned to be associated with Dathomir or the Witches at first, I don't think. Hope for the truth in this episode. Lots of revelations. Well, yeah, that's kind of what we're hoping for. And Zuko's here to say goodbye, isn't he? Hey, you're giving everyone a little cat kiss. That's what I call it when he rubs his face up against you. It's a cat kiss, because you know You don't want to actually be licked by a cat because their tongues are like sandpaper. You know. Oi, what are you doing? Oh, he's found a lid. Come on, don't be messing with that. Right, you gonna jump down now? We get ready to watch the show. His name was Eth Koth. Hopefully good fighting sequences. Definitely flashback episode of what really went down on Brendok. Definitely Kalnaka clawing Torben in the face. Was it a claw? Was it? I thought it might have been a lightsaber that he got to the face, but I don't know. But yes, I will bid you all adieu. Let's get ready for episode 7. Immediate reaction will be out on Twitter. The reaction itself will be out a couple of hours after the show ends. And then I will probably have a video or two out through the week just discussing theories and reaction to the show. And then we'll pick up for the finale next week with a pre-watch party once again. And we'll see where things go. But I do appreciate everyone stopping by, saying hello. Hopefully you enjoy it. Let me know. Hit me up on Twitter afterwards. Let me know what you think of it. And I will see you all in a bit.